In my work as a performance psychologist, often known as the stress doctor, I'm often asked, how can students reduce their stress? It's a really great question. Students have had a tremendous amount of stress over the last few years because of the pandemic, not going to school itself, screens, staying at home, not being able to socialize, having to do homework outside of the classroom context, and all of the other things that they've had to struggle with about getting sick or family members getting ill. These are things that have affected students all over the world for the last few years. We're going to look at some of the things that go on a daily basis now for students and how they can reduce their stress. In a recent study of middle schoolers, it was found that the sources of student stress are the following: getting good grades, looking good, fitting in socially, getting involved in extracurricular activities, and being good at sports. These are the really common things that affect not only middle schoolers, but high schoolers as well, and often right into college. What about all of these and how we can actually help students reduce their stress? As we saw in the last slide, the top stressor for students are getting good grades, academic stress, having to do homework, taking tests, competing with other classmates. In my work with students, particularly those who have difficulty taking tests, I have found there's a common thread that runs through every situation with every student, which is a difficulty in staying focused. If you remember, focus is one of the legs of the three-legged stool: calm, confident, and focused. Without focus, you're going to be experiencing stress, and students today have a particularly difficult time focusing. Focus means two things. It means having a goal and taking actions that get you to your goal. I got some direct personal insight over why students have so much trouble focusing these days when I invited a 15-year-old cousin of mine to come over with his VR headset. Never really tried a VR headset, so I thought it was time for me to give it a go. So he came over, and here I am with the VR headset. Well, I can tell you that just managing this, finally when I learned how to use the controllers, everything was so stimulating. I felt high after we went through one of these games. The other thing that students are so involved with these days are video games, either competing on their own against the computer or against other people. And the third factor that contributes to students having focusing problems, frankly, is that school, for many, many students, is really boring. We can help students reduce their stress at school and in their academic work in two very simple ways. One is to help them organize their time, and not just organize it, but actually set some limits about studying. So let me give you some brief hints about this. An optimal amount of time to study for any student is probably 20 to 30 minutes, and then have a 2-minute break. Now, 20 to 30 minutes means you set the timer, turn off all notifications, turn off all ringers everywhere, and just work for the 20 to 30 minutes. Students will be amazed at how much they actually get done when they fully focus, having a goal and taking actions that get them to the goal. Then take a 2-minute break. In the 2-minute break, glass of water, stretch a little bit, go to the bathroom, no screens, no texting, no phone calls. Do that sequence 20 or 30 minutes, 2-minute break. Do it 2 or 3 times, and then take a little longer break. Little longer means like 15 minutes. You can make a phone call, do a text, but that's it. Work with your student to develop some rigor about their studying. Now that's one way, but it has to go hand in hand with something else. One of the things that I've seen is that students, and actually this is true of adults as well, when they have a number of different tasks to do, say for a student they have math homework and English homework and some kind of history homework and science homework, the tendency is to go always to the easiest thing first. The problem with that is that you're putting off something that inevitably has to be done, And we know that disconnection is actually the cause of stress. So I train students always to make a list of what they have to do and start with the hardest, most challenging thing first. Do that for the first 20 minutes. What happens is they actually experience a sense of relief. They're not postponing it. They're not avoiding it. They're doing it. So organizing the time, both in terms of bounding the schedule, but also by way of organizing the sequence of studying, always starting with the most difficult thing first, then jogging to something simpler, back and forth. These two ways can really help students to reduce their stress at school. It doesn't stop school from being boring sometimes. And I'm not going to be all negative about schooling and teaching. Teaching is one of the most difficult professions in the whole world. But students also have to do their part to stay engaged and to do the work that they need to do. Use these two methods, these two tools or tips to help your student reduce their stress.